Y'all give it up for Reverend Jerry Varner.
Thanks, Ben. All right. You guys, Mia, dang. Man, that was a good word. Appreciate that. Ethan, where's Ethan? Ethan, brother, man, good to see you. That was a good word, man. I appreciate that. It's good. You guys, I've been praying. I've been praying for you. Every single one of you. I don't know your name. I don't know who you are. I didn't know who was going to be here tonight, but I've been praying for you for weeks. Ask Ben. Every once in a while, I would send Ben a text. I would say, Ben, I'm praying, man. I'm praying for you. I appreciate you, Ben, and your leadership. I appreciate Jessica so much. I appreciate Swift Creek Presbyterian. Jessica was telling me that Rockfish started in 2001. Is that right? Any historians around 2001? Dang, it's almost a quarter century of Rockfish. So y'all are a part of something. Y'all are part of like a legacy and a history here. But I've been praying. I've been praying for you. And I just feel like my heart is full because I feel like that God has been speaking to me lately. And I've been prepping and I've been like studying and I've been mostly just praying. And I said, Lord, what do you have for us? And I'm not one of these dudes that just like carries like a file of like messages in my pocket and I just like pull one out. Oh, this was a good one 20 years ago. I want to use that one again. Every time, I just want to bring something fresh because I believe that God is always on the move. I believe that he's always speaking. I believe that he always wants to show us a new thing. So I don't come with like some like pre-packaged, recycled message. Like I just feel like, God, what do you have for us at this moment? And I got to tell you, his answer to me was disturbing and kind of, I'm like, God, are you sure? This is like a room full of teenagers and you're going to have me bring this passage that we're going to look at? And so I'm just trusting God that that his Holy Spirit is going to just speak through this. And me, even me. You guys, if you could see into my past, you would be like, what the heck is this guy doing here? Even me. And anytime I get up, I don't ever get up like this, like, oh, look at me. I'm like, God, don't leave me out. What do you have for me? What do you have to say to me? So as we're getting into God's word, I want to be a vessel that he uses. I want to be a mouthpiece of God. I want to be used by his Spirit, but I don't want to be left out. I'm not like some chaperone. I'm not some bystander. I'm not a spectator. I want God's Spirit to minister to me as well. So my prayer for you for all these weeks has been, God, just speak to us. I'm a dude who believes that God talks all the time. Do you know it says in the Old Testament that the Spirit of wisdom is always speaking? It says that he cries out in the town square. I know we don't have a town square. You guys, I moved here from New York when everything was on a grid. And I came to Chesterfield. I'm like, what plan were they following when they put the roads down? And there's not like one straight, it's almost like spaghetti. So I'm looking for like numbers and grids, and man, when I first moved here, I kept getting lost all the time. But I wanted to dig into Acts chapter 7. And if you got a Bible or you got something on your phone, and if you're one of those people that is able to actually focus on one thing when you have your phone open, which I think is so hard to do, because you're going to get that notification that pops up, and you're going to want to check that out. But if you want to open up the Bible on your phone, or if you got a paper Bible, whatever, we're going to be in Acts chapter 7. So I'm one of these dudes that believes that God is speaking, and I'm a dude who talks to God as well. Anybody else? Anybody else in here? You talk to God? All right, not many. We need to raise that. Okay, good. Thank the Lord. The Bible's confusing to me, you guys. Like, I just read it, and there's a lot of things that are like, what in the world? I don't understand that. Does anybody read the Bible and just get confused like I do? And you guys, I don't know what you think of pastors. Like, pastors are not like the old man on the hill that knows every answer to every question. Like, I'm a student of God's word. I'm a student just like you're a student. I want to keep walking with him, and I want to keep growing in him, and I want to keep running after him, and I keep losing him in the crowd half the time, and I fumble, and I mess up, and I fall. But he's so faithful, and he's so present, and he's so good to me. So when I was 16, I had a girlfriend. And that relationship, I'm not blaming the girl, but that relationship wrecked my life. Like, I did everything wrong a dude could do in a relationship with a girlfriend. And I came to the end of that. I'm going to spare you all the gory details. I came to the end of that situation. And again, it wasn't the girl's fault. It takes two to tango. You know what they say. But I took responsibility for my decisions in that season in my life as a 16-year-old. And I came to the end of it. And I kid you not, I ruined, decimated, devastated, destroyed every other relationship in my life. Everything was destroyed for the sake of this one girl. Let me pause here. I'm going to give you a little, we got a room full of guys and girls, okay? I'm going to tell you, whenever like a teenage girl comes to me and she's looking for advice on like relationships and, you know, boyfriend or whatever, whenever a teenage girl comes to me, here's what I'd say about you. Guys are idiots. That's what I say. Guys are idiots, all right? I have never had a guy argue that. I've never had a guy disagree. Guys, you know, we are idiots, okay? But then when a teenage guy comes to me and he wants some advice about a girl or about relationships, here's what I say. Ladies, I've never had anybody argue this. Girls are trouble. Girls are trouble. Guys are idiots. Girls are trouble. Nobody, that's my working theory. I'm going on like 30 years on that. Yeah, I think it's true. I think both of those statements are true. No disrespect to anybody, because I'm a guy too. Guys are idiots, girls are trouble. So that's my standing. So I was in this relationship with this girl, and just piece by piece destroyed every other relationship in my life, including my relationship with God. Destroyed it. And when the dust settled, and when everyone was gone, and when everything had crumbled, Jesus was the only one there. He was the only solid ground I could find. So here's the prayer that I prayed as a 17-year-old. I said this to God: God, wherever you want me to go, I'll go. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Whatever you want me to say, I'll say. That was it. That was all I had. I had this big pile of mess of my life that I had created, and I shoved it across the table, and I said, God, if you want to do something with this, go ahead. Because I learned very quickly by the age of 17, if I'm in control, I'm going to drive that thing into a ditch every single time. So I pushed everything across the table. I appreciated one of the things that Mia said. Jesus and the world are going in two different directions. And I'm just going to jump right to the end. You guys, by the end of my very brief talk tonight, I'm going to ask you to make a choice. You got to pick one, because they're going in two different directions. So it's up to you. All right. We're going to look at Acts chapter 7. There's a little bit that we're going to be in chapter 6, but Acts chapter 7, the Bible is a long book. I've actually heard it called a library, and I kind of like that idea. It's a library of 66 books, and it's a long and a confusing book. So I try and give people a little encouragement anytime I can. If you want to kind of get the gist of the whole Bible, if you want to get like the Bible just kind of summarized, read Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7 pretty much summarizes the whole thing. Like back when I was in high school, they were called like Cliff Notes. Some of you old people are in there, you remember Cliff Notes. And then I think it went to Spark Notes, and I don't know what it is now. But anyway, it was like a summarized version. If you didn't have time, like I didn't, if you didn't have time to read like To Kill a Mockingbird or Hamlet or whatever, and it's like the night before a test, you pull out your little Cliff Notes and you try and get the gist of Ophelia and whatever, the Uriah or whatever the guy is. So Acts chapter 7 is kind of like the summarized Bible, Acts chapter 7. So we're going to look at that. But I want to ask you, before we get into that, let me say this. Who Jesus is to you is the most important detail about you. Who he is to you defines everything else. Who he is to you decides everything else. Who Jesus is to you is going to set the pace and the trajectory of everything else that you do. So that's why, and that's a question every single person has to ask and answer. Who is Jesus to me? So as we get into this, I'm just going to ask you that. Who is Jesus to you? And there's no wrong answer. If for you he's a stranger, if you think he's the one who ruined your parents' marriage, if you think he's the one who took that friend that you love so much and now they're gone, if you're blaming him for that, that's okay. Just be honest. Just be honest when you ask the question, who is Jesus to me? Who Jesus is to you is the most important detail about who you are. It's not what you look like. It's not how good or bad your grades are. It's not what your GPA is. It's not what the career is that you're thinking about. It's not who you think is hot. It's not how many followers you have. It's not who your parents are. It's not the neighborhood you live in. By the way, this is a nice neighborhood. I don't live here. You guys, I drove into this neighborhood. I'm like, darn, this is a nice neighborhood. That's not the most important thing. Who Jesus is to you is the one singular, most important detail about you. Hold that. Hold on to that. It impacts literally everything else about you. So, what is the bold, obedient step that Jesus is going to call you to take tonight? That's kind of like the overarching question. What is the bold, obedient step? And there's nobody that's left out of this. Nobody is exempt. I can be looking at the oldest person in the room who's been walking most faithfully with Jesus, thinks they got it nailed. You got a step to take too. Every single person in this place. There's no chaperones, there's no wardens, there's no bystanders, there's no spectators. There's a pastor over here. Every single person in this place has a step of obedience that they can take. So for some of you, it might be inviting you into this authentic relationship with him. You've never taken that step. Maybe you got everybody else fooled, but you know in your heart you don't have an actual relationship with God. But you know that he's calling you, and it's time for you to respond. That's going to be a step that some of you are going to take tonight. For some of you, it might be you've been more of like a churchgoer. You've been more of like a religiously active person. And you guys, that was my life growing up. I was a poster child for what I call performance-based spirituality. Here's what I thought. If I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I add all those up, then God's going to be happy with me. That's what I thought. If I go to church, if I say a prayer at mealtime, if I read my Bible every once in a while, if I go to like super spiritual and go to like Wednesday night prayer meeting, like where only a few people go, if I go to those things and I add those things up, all right, God's going to be pleased with me. And I didn't know that I had it completely backwards. Some of you are thinking you got to do this and this and this and this and this to gain God's love. And I'm telling you, he just loves you. He just loves you. The weight of the world lifted off my shoulders when I learned that there's nothing I can do so good to make him love me more, and there's nothing I can do so bad to make him love me less. He just loves me. You say, I'm struggling with same-sex attraction. He just loves you. You say, I'm a liar. He just loves you. You say, I cheat on every test I can. He just loves you. I lie to my parents all the time for no good reason. He just loves you. He just loves you. You can't shake it. You can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop. All you can do is fling your arms wide open to this God who's got his arms flung wide open for you. And you say, okay, I'll take it. And that's what I did at 17. Okay, I'll take it. So that might be you church-going, religious people. You're more of a churchgoer than a follower of Jesus, and you've been more religious than relational. You got this like routine going, but it makes no real life difference in your daily life. It doesn't. Jesus is making no difference. You know the songs to sing. You might know a few scripture verses. You know what the church service is like, but it doesn't make a difference when the church service is over. For some of you, it might be that God is calling you into something deeper. And you've been hanging out like in the shallow kiddie pool. You know that he's calling you somewhere deeper, but you're fighting that. And you just want to kind of wade around and just a little splash around in the safe place. Let me remind you that Jesus didn't die to make you safe. He didn't die to make you nice. He didn't die to make you a good neighbor. He didn't die to make you a high GPA student. He didn't die to make you a good citizen. He died to make you dangerous to the forces of evil. That's why Jesus died. He died to make you dangerous. And some of you are just playing it safe. You're just splashing around in the kiddie pool. So that's going to be one of the steps, another one of the steps that you might take. Here's the problem, you guys. You are your own God, and you're calling the shots in your life. You've got an idol in your life, and it's the person that is looking in the mirror. I appreciated Mia and the transparency that she shared. Some of us are just kind of way too into ourselves. We're living this kind of self-centered, self-absorbed life. There's an idol in your life. You didn't think about this. There's an idol in your life, and it's you. It's self-idolatry. You're idolizing yourself. When you put yourself at the center of the universe, what other conclusion can we come to but that you think you're the God of your life? Your shoulders were never built to carry the weight of your own life. That's why you're struggling. That's why you're anxious. That's why you're stressed. That's why you're depressed. You think that you got to carry the weight of your own life, and you were never designed to carry the weight of your own life. That weight belongs on God's shoulders, and you think that you got to carry it. And I'm telling you, that's self-idolatry. You've made yourself into an idol. For some of you, you may not have an idol, I-D-O-L, but you're idle, I-D-L-E. That means you're just standing there. You're not doing anything. So I ask myself on a regular basis, what is my next step of faith and obedience? Because everybody has one. All right, Acts chapter 7, real quick. And this is a long chapter. I'm not going to read it all. I like to tell people, just read Acts chapter 7. So if the Bible feels too big, read Acts chapter 7. But I do want to warn you, this is a story about a dude named Stephen, and it doesn't end well. That's why God's like, I'm praying. God, what do you have for Rockfish? What do you have for the students at Rockfish when I go to Swift Creek Presbyterian Church? And he lays it on me. I want you to talk about Acts chapter 7. I want you to talk about Stephen and his sermon and his story and how that went. And I'm like, ugh, bad idea, God. That's a terrible story. You know how that ends? You know how the story ends? Some of you have heard it before. If you haven't, I don't want to spoil it, but it's not a great story. This is not a super, Hallmark card, warm, fuzzy, super inspirational. All right, God, let's go for it. So Stephen is standing in front of the religious leaders of that day. Stephen is a follower of Jesus. And he's standing in front of these religious leaders. It would be the churchy people. It would be like the religious churchy people of today. That's who Jesus is standing in front of. And his whole desire is just to communicate the story of Jesus. And how the whole Old Testament, because that's what they build their lives on, how the whole Old Testament leads them and us to Jesus. That was Stephen's whole desire, was just to communicate Jesus to these leaders. By the way, if you ever read the Old Testament and you ever come across something that's confusing, or maybe it's frustrating, or maybe it seems harsh, or maybe it's challenging to understand, just remember this. Really, in general, all of the Old Testament always just points to Jesus. All the Old Testament is doing is just setting the stage for Jesus. Anytime you read an Old Testament verse and you're like, I don't know what that has to do with me or anything else, just remember, in some way, it's probably just setting the stage for the need of a Messiah, for the advent, the coming of the Savior. So if you ever get confused, just kind of tuck that one away. So almost everything you read before Jesus points to Jesus in one way or another. So if you look through that lens, I think you might read the Old Testament differently. So let's first realize that Stephen was set up. If you look with me in Acts chapter 6, the verse before, I'm going to read to you 11 through 14, because they did Stephen dirty. All right. Then they secretly, these were the religious leaders, then they secretly persuaded some men to say, we have heard Stephen speak words of blasphemy against Moses and against God. So they stirred up the people and the elders and the teachers of the law. They seized Stephen and brought him before the Sanhedrin. They produced false witnesses who testified, this fellow never stops speaking against the holy place and against the law. For we have heard him say that Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs Moses handed down to us. You guys, you ever get lied on? Somebody just lies. Somebody just says something about it, and you're like, what? What the heck? That's not even true. So that's what happened to Stephen. They stirred up these lies about Stephen, and now he's in front of the Sanhedrin, all these religious leaders. So Stephen was just plain set up. But Stephen never demands justice for himself. I want you to understand that. Stephen, because when someone does us wrong, don't we want to slash their tires or key their car or burn their house to the ground or punch them in the face? Or we want vengeance, right? We want revenge. You did that to me? Oh, you better look out because I'm going to do this to you. That's human nature. But Stephen never demands justice. He's never give me my defense attorney. I'm going to lawyer up. I'm not going to say another word. He never demands justice from the wrong that had been done. That's insane to me. Never demands justice for himself. Because here's the thing. When you're rooted in Jesus and when you're loving him first, what other people say and think and do doesn't matter to you. Oh my Lord, I wish that I could just wave a wand. I wish that I could flip a switch. I wish that I could make all of you stop caring about what other people think of you. Oh, the freedom you would live in if you simply stopped caring what other people think about you. Your life would be radically different if you stopped caring so much about what other people think about you. And Stephen, he just didn't care. So when you are rooted in Jesus, what people say and think and do, it doesn't matter to you. Because we often contort ourselves, right? To fit into what other people expect or other people want. You guys, I can tell a lot of you are in high school. You just got that whole high school vibe. I can tell. There's a lot of high schoolers in this room. I'm going to tell you something that all the adults know, and maybe they haven't told you this. You ever have a water balloon, right? You ever get a water balloon fight, right? Your high school is a water balloon. That's all that it is, okay? And on graduation day, guess what happens to that water balloon? It gets popped. And all those little droplets that represent all of those people that you are bending yourself into shapes to please, they just all disperse. And I swear to you guys, the graduation day was the last day I ever saw any of the people that I spent all of those years with. And I spent so much time trying to please them. I spent so much time trying to fit into this group. Don't waste your time doing that. Don't waste your time trying to fit in to a group of people that you're never, ever going to see again. What if, instead of trying to fit in, what if you allowed God to use you in a crazy, mighty, radical way to make a difference on your campus and among your friends because of your love for him? What if that, instead of contorting yourself to fit in, what if he did something else? All right, let's look at Stephen's response to this crowd who was accusing him. I'm looking at chapter 7, verse 2. And he says, to this he replied, brothers and fathers. He's calling them family. So all these people who are accusing him, he turns and calls them family. Brothers, fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia before he lived in Haran. And he said, leave your country and your people, God said, and go to the land that I will show you. He didn't call for a lawyer. He didn't cry out about the injustice that was this wrongful accusation against him. He just simply used the situation to speak about Jesus. And when you're rooted in Jesus and when you're loving him well, you're going to see people not as obstacles, but as opportunities. Because I used to live a life of everybody was in my way. You ever feel that way? Everyone's in my way. Everyone is an obstacle. But what if you lived every day of your life? People aren't obstacles, they're opportunities. What if problems became platforms? What if every time something came up that just bugged you or it didn't go the way you wanted it to be, you asked yourself, number one, what can I learn from this situation? And number two, how can I point people to Jesus through this situation? What if you asked that question? That's what Stephen did. We're all born into this self-centered mindset, okay? When you were a baby, your parents made you the center of their world, especially if you're the oldest, because you're the first one to come along and you blew their minds, their whole life turned upside down. And now they had this tiny little human being, and they put you in the center of their world. And then as you started like toddling around, they wanted to get the very best things. They wanted to do the very best things at any given moment. So as a child, they built their life around you. And some of them are still doing it. And so the unintended consequence is that you think you are the center. You think you're the center of your universe. But when we step into this love relationship with Jesus, he relieves us of the burden of living a self-centered life. And that's when life really gets good. Self-centered life is exhausting. Self-centered life will wear you down. Being self-absorbed is a miserable existence. All right, look at Stephen's message to those who are listening. Now, this is verses 30 through 50. I'm not going to read all of these. I'm just going to sum it up for you because I don't have a ton of time. But I want to encourage you to read it sometime. This whole chapter of Acts chapter 7. So verses 3 through 50. So Stephen knew the story. And if you look, he starts with Abraham all the way back in the Old Testament. In fact, he says to the Sanhedrin, he says, our father Abraham. So he's including himself in all of that. And he's starting in Abraham. He goes through so many high points in the Old Testament. He tells the whole story. The point of that is that he knows the story. So years ago, I was on a middle school mission trip. We went out to Kilmarnock, Virginia, and we're like re-roofing houses, and we're painting houses, and we're building wheelchair ramps. We're doing all these things. And so for 3 days, and each of us had a team. So I'm on this house painting team, right? And there was this girl, Rachel. She was in my youth group in middle school. Now she's married, but she was a middle schooler at that point. And there was a kid next to her. And for the 3 days that we were painting that house, I listened to Rachel tell the whole story of the Bible to this other kid who had no idea what the story of the Bible was. I have never been so proud of a middle school kid, started from the very beginning and walked all the way through and told him all about Jesus. I want to ask you, do you know the story? Now listen, I'm not saying you have to know every single minute detail of the Old Testament and all that, but I'm saying, like, do you know the story of redemption? Do you know the love story? Do you know the story of God? Do you know how God came for his people because his people could never get back with him? So he came for us. Do you know the story of the Bible? She knew the story, and Stephen knew the story. So when you're rooted in Jesus, not only do you know the story, but you see your story within God's story. You're gonna live such an incredible life when you realize that your story is part of his story, that your story is actually woven into the story of God. And a lot of us try and isolate ourselves. We try and be independent. We're trying to be like, nah, I'm my own person. I'm doing my own thing. But there's so much joy, and life gets so good when you realize that your story is in his story. Your story is part of his story. And when you share that story, even though it's still being written, because y'all are you're right at the very threshold of your life. You're all young people at the very threshold of your life. I'm on the other side. I'm on the back nine, as they say. In my life, I'm past the midway point. I'm kind of on the downhill side of my life. But you're right at the beginning, right at the threshold. And when you see your story wrapped up in his story, and you're willing to tell that story. Now, this is where you're going to hit the brakes, because you're going to be like, yeah, but what if I start telling my story and people what if they ask a question? I don't know what to say. They ask me a question and then I don't know the answer, and then I just look dumb. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is this: Jesus heals this dude who was born blind. And everybody's up in arms about it. Everybody wants to know what happened. Even the disciples were so confused about this situation. Everybody's got questions. And so they go to this blind dude. And they're like, hey, who is this guy? How can you now see? We've known you as the blind dude since birth, and now you can see. How did this happen? And here was his amazing testimony. Listen, whether this dude who healed me, whether he was good man, bad man, I don't know. I don't know any of the answers to any of your questions, but this is what I do know. I was blind, and now I can see. That was his whole story. That was his whole testimony. Listen, you guys, when it comes down to it, you don't need to know the answers to every Bible question. You don't have to be a Bible scholar. You don't have to know everything about every verse. All you got to know is this: I was blind, and now I can see. That's the whole story of redemption. So he knew the story, and he shared the story. Now look at the end of Stephen's message, the very end. He says to the Sanhedrin, these religious leaders of the day, he says, "You betrayed and murdered him." He's talking about Jesus. So he starts with Abraham, works all the way through the Old Testament, tells them the story of Jesus, and then the big climax of this sermon from Stephen is, and you guys betrayed him and you murdered him. You killed him. You nailed him to a cross and you crucified him. But when you're rooted in Jesus, your life is going to stand in contrast to the culture around you. So remember in the very beginning when Stephen said to him, brothers, fathers, and he says, our father Abraham. He's including himself, like we're a family together. And then at the end of the story, he's like, you betrayed him. You murdered him. Friends, if you want to make any difference in the kingdom, and I believe so many of you do, you've got to step away from the culture that's calling you down this broad path. You got to step onto this narrow path. Jesus said there's two roads. There's a wide one, lots of people find it. There's a narrow one, and only a few people find it. The wide one leads to destruction. The narrow one leads to life. Man, if I could have any heart's desire met tonight, is that I would leave this place and I would be able to know that every single one of you is hearing this message, hearing God's voice call you, and you are deciding to walk on the narrow path, the one that leads to life. So, look at Stephen's final minutes of his life. Stephen probably didn't plan on dying that day. He probably didn't get up thinking, yep, this is it. Sometime this afternoon, I'm going to be surrounded by an angry mob, and they're all going to have rocks in their hands, and they're going to throw them at me until I'm dead. But that's how Stephen's day ended. But the reality of Jesus' glory and presence was all that Stephen could see, and it was all that he cared about. Even while they're pelting him with rocks. Some historians believe that some stonings happened when they would put the person in a hole. They would put them in a hole and they would bury them just up to the neck. So shoulder up was above the ground. Everything else was down below the ground. And we don't know how Stephen died, but they could have done it that way. Can you even imagine? Can you imagine that kind of a death? But even while that's happening, the glory of God and the presence of Jesus was all that Stephen cared about. As he gave his life as a witness, as a testimony. So how is it with us today? Is the presence and power of Jesus all that we need? Are we consumed with other things? Because you guys, we're dumb. We're just dumb. We're dumb, stubborn, distracted. Little shiny objects will just take our attention in some weird, crazy, dumb, shallow direction. Did you know that the average American scrolls on their phone the height of Mount Everest every 20 days? Did you know that? You do this till you reach the height of Mount Everest every 20 days. And I'm not trying to demonize the phone or anything. I love technology. I love my phone and everything, but that's just like, I can't calculate how many hours of my life have gone to nothing just by doing that. Wasting the time that God has given me. You guys, I don't want to see you waste any more time when God has this incredible story that he's writing in your life, that he wants to use your life in the story of other people's lives. So listen, sometimes when I need to recalibrate, sometimes when I need to remember what is most important in my life, I'll close my eyes and I will imagine myself standing in the presence of God. I just got there. I don't know what took me out, but I just got there. And I'm standing in the presence of God. And here's what I want to hear him say. Jerry, welcome. Well done. You've been good. You've been a faithful servant. You guys, when I need to recalibrate, when I need to remember what's really important, when I need to know what direction my life should go in, I just stop and close my eyes. And I imagine the voice of Jesus saying, well done, good and faithful servant. Welcome home. Because I defy you to find anything as important as hearing those words. I defy you anything in this life, no matter what kind of job you can have, no matter how hot your spouse is, how big your house is, how awesome your job is, how big your bank account is, all of that will fade. All of that will be gone. But what will Jesus say to you when you're standing before him? I want him to say, well done. Jerry, welcome home, my son. Well done. Good and faithful servant. That's my prayer for you. That's my prayer, that it's those words that would drive you. It's that encouragement, it's that invitation that would drive you and how you live. Unless you are in love with Jesus, I saved the most obnoxiously rude statement for the very end. Unless you're in love with Jesus and in love with his bride, you're going to be useless in the kingdom of God. Oh, that was hard to think, that was hard to write, that was hard to say, but I believe that with all my heart. Unless you are in love with Jesus, not a churchgoer, not someone who just goes to youth group when you have a little nothing else to do. Not when you know the songs and the Bible verses. And I'm saying, unless you are in love with Jesus. Have you met him? Do you know him? Are you just playing games with this life that he's given you? Unless you're in love with Jesus and unless you're in love with his bride, you will be useless in the kingdom of God. I care enough to just be that bold with you. Because I don't want to see you waste another second chasing after what the world is offering you. Because it's going nowhere. I wish I had a nickel for every teenager who graduated high school, went out into the world, danced with the world, did things the world's way, and came back totally bloodied and battered and beat up, and they realized the world has nothing. I thought the world had everything. The world has nothing. None of the promises came true. The world can't deliver on anything. And they came back to me and they're like, I wasted so much time chasing after what the world could offer. There's nothing there. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to end with where I started. Jesus is the only solid ground you'll ever find. He's the only one. I promise you that. You can write that down 20 years from now, take that out, and you're going to be like, he was right. And I hope you're listening. I hope you're taking this in. He's the only solid ground you're going to find. So what do you need to do with what God has spoken to us through Stephen tonight? What do you have in your life worth dying for? That's a really good measuring stick. What do you have in your life worth dying for? Are you rooted firmly in a love relationship with Jesus? That's what I want for you. I want you to be in love. I want you to have a love affair with Jesus. That's what I want most for you. Or are you living fearfully because you're worried about what other people are thinking about you? And are you ready to take this bold step in the direction that God is calling you? I want to invite the band. Thank you so much for serving us this weekend, band. I want to thank Ben for having me come tonight. I want to thank all of you. But as we just spend these next few minutes just singing and worshiping and praising God, I want to give you full freedom and permission just to respond to however God is speaking to you. And you might be like, Jerry, come on, relax. It's only Friday night. We got a whole other tomorrow night. Maybe I'm saying, please don't put this off. Don't put this off. You don't know. You don't know what your story holds. You don't know what tomorrow holds. Please don't put this off. I'm asking you, I'm begging you, if you are not in love with Jesus, start that right now. There's no magic words. There's no magic prayer. It's just the arms wide open. He's got his arms wide open toward you. You put your arms wide open toward him, and you just embrace him. You just take him. You say, Jesus, I learned about how much you love me. I learned about this cross that you died on. I learned that I can have a love relationship with you, to the fact that I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to live by the world's rules anymore. I can be totally free of that. Jesus, I just want you. And I take you right now to be my best friend. I'm going to walk with you. Church people, churchgoers, you've been playing like this routine game. You're just kind of like, you're on this like little hamster wheel and just doing the same thing over and over and over. You don't have any passion left. You're in this stale religious routine, and I want to invite you to break free of that. The King of the world is inviting you into a love affair with him. Break free from religion and just fall in love with Jesus. Whatever he is speaking to you right now, I just want to invite you to respond. And we're going to sing. If you want to stand and sing, that's cool. If you want to come up here and you want to just pray, I'll be over to the side. If you want to come and talk to me, if you want to find Ben or one of the other leaders and just, pray with them. If you want to bring a friend with you, just drag them along and pray with this friend that you love and care about so much. But I just want to invite you to respond how God is speaking to you.